entire season. That's what our goal has always been.
Is there a little part of you, though, that wanted another crack at Alabama?
Just a tiny bit.
The main target staying down, though.
Jamison Williams will not return to this game.
It's going to be an interesting challenge for Bryce Young here. And it's picked off by Smith, and Georgia claims its first lead.
This call is going to go a long way.
Alabama reclaims the lead. Touchdown, Georgia! The Dogs retake the lead. Biggest third down in Bryce Young's career. And intercepted all the way to the end zone. And Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide. And the drought is over. National champions at long last.
Oh, you know that feels good. A huge win for Kirby Smart and the Dogs, bringing home that national championship for the first time since 1980. What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into First Take. We got a crew here today. Keyshawn Johnson, Sam Acho. I'm Charlie Arnold. We got Jeff Saturday joining us in just a few minutes to talk NFL Super Wild Card Weekend. But guys, last night, wow, you know what? I think it's also appropriate. Let's give a shout out. James Dunn, one of our producers, went to Georgia. He has been waiting for this moment. Also, my First Take, Her Take co-host, Elle Duncan. I know for a fact that she is jumping for joy. I don't know who jumped higher last night. Was it Elle Duncan or Kirby Smart? You guys saw that jumping on the sidelines, right?
Might have been Elle, though, to be honest with you. She's always repping the GA, so it could have been her.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys, well, let's get right into it. It was a rematch of the SEC Championship just weeks ago, but boy, did we see a much different game. A game that began as a field goal fest in the first half turned into a real opportunity for Georgia QB Stetson Bennett in the second, throwing 2 touchdowns, completing 17 of 26 passes for 224 yards. But the nail in the coffin for Alabama came in the form of a Bryce Young pick six with 54 seconds to go. Stetson Bennett, thankful the D, able to undo his costly turnover just seconds before that.
I mean, I just knew there was going to be no way we were going to let a turnover like that stop us from winning the national championship. There's no way I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to be the reason we lost tonight.
You lost this game against Alabama in 2017. How much sweeter does that make this win?
Well, that one will be with me for a long time, but this one will be with me for much longer. I'm proud of the University of Georgia, the support we get there. A lot of credit to Alabama, Coach Saban. They had a lot of injuries. You know, they lost Jamison Williams in a tough situation, but our kids kept fighting and never doubted.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
You know, these two guys that are sitting up here, they're not defined by one game. These guys played great for us all year. They're great competitors. They were great leaders on this team. I just want to thank them for that and let everybody know how proud I am of these two guys.
Okay, not only did Georgia look like a different team this time around, but so did Alabama, actually. They were without receivers. Jamison Williams, he was out the entire second half. Also, John Mechie. So that being said, Keyshawn, was last night's win more about Georgia's quarterback Bennett Stetson or Bama's injuries?
I think it was more about Bama injuries. When you look at those injuries, Kirby Smart alluded to it. You just mentioned it. No Williams, no Mechie. On top of that, you go to the secondary side of things. You had Jackson in replacement for the starter there at the cornerback position. So when you lose some of your top players, it's very difficult to overcome that, especially at the quarterback position. Your top 2 wide receivers for Bryce Young did not finish the game. In fact, one of them didn't even start the game.
Yeah.
And now you lose your top dog in the game. So it's very difficult for you to start to get off to doing things. You start pressing like Bryce Young was doing. You start taking chances like Bryce Young was doing. It's a different football game. There's nothing taken away from Georgia and Stetson Bennett at all. He had a tremendous season. I cannot take anything away from him, but I have to also say, just like Kirby Smart said, they had a lot of injuries. The injuries are key when you play professional or collegiate sports. You've got to have the depth, and clearly Alabama ran out of the depth. That's one of the reasons they lost the football game.
Well, Key, I'm over here laughing because if anybody's got depth, it's Alabama and it's Nick Saban. You heard when the season started, NIL, he's talking about, man, my quarterback's getting paid. We have guys who come here. Jamison Williams transferred from Ohio State, the Ohio State, to come and play. So if anybody's got depth and knows how to develop players, it's Nick Saban in Alabama, number one. Number two, what I heard sounded a little bit like, better yet, a lot like excuses, right? Well, this guy got hurt and that guy got hurt, and that's the reason why Alabama lost. When in all reality, we've seen injuries happen before, and we've seen Alabama overcome certain injuries. We saw Alabama overcome an injury to John Mechie in the SEC championship game, and that's when Jamison Williams stepped up. We saw Alabama overcome an injury in the Iron Bowl when Jamison Williams, not an injury, but a player being out. Jamison Williams got called for targeting. Now all of a sudden he was out for the second half of that game. We've seen people step up in the Alabama uniform. And so for me to come and say that the reason that Alabama lost, or better yet, the reason that Georgia won was because of Alabama's injuries, I'm not buying that. What I'm buying is that the reason that Alabama lost that game, better yet, the reason that Georgia won that game wasn't because of injuries, wasn't because of guys who weren't there on the defensive backfield at corner or at receiver. I think the reason that Georgia won this game was because of Stetson Bennett, the same Stetson Bennett who all over Twitter people were calling for him to be benched. Not just this game, people have been calling for him to be benched anytime one of Georgia's games got close, right? Anytime the game was close, any little mistake that they saw, people were calling for this guy to be benched, for the 5-star recruit, for the 6'6" quarterback, for JT Daniels. Yet week in and week out, the guy who started the season third on the depth chart in Stetson Bennett came in and proved everybody wrong. And he did it in the biggest moment. So for me, this Georgia team that found a way to win their first championship in 41 years, first time that Kirby Smart's beating Nick Saban in his last 4 tries, even though they've been up every single time in the second, third, or sometimes even fourth quarter. For me, this win is all about Stetson Bennett. Why? Because in the SEC championship game, we saw Stetson Bennett struggle, yet in this game, we saw Stetson Bennett shine.
Well, but Stetson Bennett was remarkable, but so was Georgia's defense. I mean, look at them compared to the SEC championship game. They weren't able to hit Bryce Young even once. This game, they were able to hit him 10 times, hurried him on, I think, about 26 passes, and really were able to improvise, adapt, and they played all 4 quarters. So you got to give some props to the D as well.
But here, look at this, Sam and Charlie. Okay, Sam, you're saying that they overcome injuries, they have the depth. Yes, historically, they had depth, but even that depth that they have, when you have lack of experience and you get thrusted into a lineup, you then cannot play at the same level that Mechie played at, the same level that Jamison Williams played at. You're missing something. Jackson, who did they target when you talk about Stetson Bennett? They went after the corner Jackson. They targeted the weakness of the team. So if that is your strength, they certainly wouldn't have done that. When you talk about the SEC championship game, you mentioned that all of a sudden Jamison Williams had to step up. He was missing in the national championship game. He wasn't there for Bryce Young to rely on. So therefore, Bryce Young felt as though he needed to take all of the pressure and put it on his back to force throws, to try to do things. And on top of that, you got to catch the damn ball when it's thrown to you. So those individuals that was put in position to make those plays, they were not catching balls. They were butterfingering them, trying to figure out how to move their hands a certain way to catch the footballs. I take nothing away from Georgia. I think Georgia deserved the national championship, but much like Charlie said, the defensive front was reckless. They were getting after him. He started to panic at times to get the football out because he didn't feel comfortable in that situation. Had nothing to do with Bennett. Zero. He gets credit. Yes, it's not the 6'5", 215-pound quarterback. There's no question about it. He gets all the credit in the world. Like I said at the start, from beginning to end since taking over, he's done a tremendous job. But let's not just turn this into it is the reason they won is because of Stetson Bennett. Let's not do that.
Sam, you're killing me.
Key, I love you. I love you so much. Let me tell you why I love you, because you're talking about pressure. You talking about, man, well, Bryce Young, he's got all this pressure, and his receivers are down and facing all this pressure. This is the Heisman Trophy winner.
Doesn't matter,
Bryce
though.
Young. This is the dude who set records week in and week out. This dude has felt pressure. You saw the Iron Bowl, Key. You saw the Iron Bowl. He got sacked 8 times in the Iron Bowl. That was more sacks than he's been sacked all season. Yet in the last minute, no, he didn't. He only had one guy. He had John Mechie. Yet in the last minute, the last 59 seconds of that game, we saw Bryce Young overcome pressure. Don't come at me with, well, it was too much pressure for Bryce Young, number one. Number two, you talked about receivers. You said, man, those receivers dropped passes. And yes, passes were dropped by the Alabama receivers because there were some backups in there. But let's not forget, there were some backup receivers for Georgia as well. George Pickens, he only showed up for the very beginning of that game. You saw that big catch that he had. But A.D. Mitchell, the dude you talked about who caught that pass, the touchdown on a backup, he also was a backup. He started the season as a backup. He was not supposed to be the guy. Georgia had a ton of injuries at receiver as well. And so both teams were playing through injuries, with injuries. Both teams were playing with backups. And so let's not sit here and pretend that Georgia was just completely healthy and they had everybody and all these things and they just beat a depleted team and just act like Georgia, A.D. Mitchell is just this superhero. He stepped up big, number one. And number two, yes, the defensive backs were injured.
Sam, I didn't start off saying that they had injuries. Their head coach, Kirby Smart, started off saying they had injuries. So maybe he's giving an excuse to his old boss. I don't know. All I'm doing is stating the facts, man. That's all I'm doing. Yes, Mitchell may have been a backup, but in that particular moment, their backup was better than Alabama's backup. Let's be honest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can absolutely be honest in that scenario. But you're also saying that the question was, okay, what was the reason, right? The main cause, the important reason as to why Alabama lost or better yet, Georgia won. And you said that the reason that Georgia won this game was because of Alabama's injuries. That's what you said.
I believe if Alabama was at full strength, it would have been a different game. We saw the injury of Jamison, right? If he didn't get injured right there on a big chunk play, you don't think they would have went down there and put 7 on the board?
Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But in all reality, Key, Alabama has been at full strength health. Well, no, hear me out, because you're laughing, you're smiling, which is all good and all dandy. It's a new year. It's 2022. So,
yes, it is.
In all reality, Alabama has been healthy all season long. Throughout the regular season, Alabama was healthy. But, man, you look at the matchups, like opponents. You look at the way that both these teams were playing, both at full strength. Georgia was dominating, and to put the words of Nick Saban, Georgia was the most consistent team. That's what Nick Saban said. We want to talk about what coaches said. Nick Saban said Georgia was the most consistent team all season long. Anyone like you who watched college football knows that. Alabama had its ups and its downs at full strength. So we cannot assume that if everyone were going to be healthy in this game, that Alabama would have just rolled up its sleeves and won this game. I believe there was a lot of pent-up anger and aggression. Like, if you want to do anything, Key, give credit to Kirby Smart. Give credit to this Georgia team. Give credit to the last 37 days where they got embarrassed in the SEC championship game and they were out of condition. They said, we're going to run extra. We're going to wake up early. We're going to do all these things to find a way to win. If you're going to give anybody credit, and you don't want to give it to Stetson Bennett, give it to the Georgia football team and then give it to Kirby Smart, who has been saying all season that you are either elite or you are not. Sometimes the chips fall where they may. In this scenario, the chips fell with an injury to Jameson Williams, and I hope he gets healthy soon because he is a baller, a beast, one of the best receivers in college football. That's where the chips fell. But let's not just sit here and assume that, well, because all these guys were injured, right? Cameron Latu, tight end, he stepped up big, even through injuries. And so I know that it sounds good to say that Alabama would have won if they were at full strength. But Vegas, who had Alabama as underdog, Will Anderson, who should have been in the Heisman conversation, their star defensive player, who kind of said we were an underdog. The whole team was like, man, we need to play our best ball. And they didn't play their best ball, whether because of injury or because of they were not ready for the moment. And Georgia, for all season, was prepping for it, and they found a way to get the job done.
Well, if I don't have my two top wide receivers in the national championship game versus the SEC, where Alabama ran shop on Georgia, it's going to be a different game. It's just going to be a different game.
But also, let's just give some props to Stetson Bennett, you guys.
Nick Saban has 7 rings, bro.
Okay, so we got to move on, but let's quickly give some props to Stetson Bennett, okay? He's a walk-on quarterback. He also was he was getting so much criticism leading up to this game. Everyone asking the question, does he have what it takes to win a national championship? Yes, my friends, he absolutely does. Okay, Sam, we're saying goodbye to you for just a little bit, but you'll be back because we have to move on to kind of the bad news of yesterday. depending who you ask. As expected, yesterday was met with a lot of coaching turnover following the season's end. But what wasn't expected was Miami head coach Brian Flores losing his job. He's only the fourth coach in Dolphins history to record 2 winning seasons in his first 3 years with the team. Meanwhile, Joe Judge, who just closed out a 4-13 season with the Giants, still has his job despite leaving everyone baffled Sunday after calling for a quarterback sneak at 3rd and 9 when the Giants were trailing 3-0. Giants general manager Dave Gettleman, he did announce his retirement yesterday. And now we welcome in Jeff Saturday. So, Jeff, are you more surprised Brian Flores was fired or that Joe Judge still hasn't been?
That Joe Judge hasn't been. And make no mistake, I think that Brian Flores firing is ridiculous. He had no business being fired. But when I watched that debacle that they called a Giants football game on Sunday and that 3rd and 9 call where they go into a basically reverse bone and run that thing up there. I mean, compare and contrast that to the Detroit Lions, right? Think about the Fighting Dan Campbell. They run like a reverse pass, a double pass for touchdowns. They're leaving it all out on the field because it really doesn't matter. And it didn't matter for the Giants either. And they're not trying to aggressively attack the defense and make plays. I don't care if it's Fromm. I don't care if it's Glenn. I don't care if it was Daniel Jones. Like, this is the last time you're going to play as a group. To play conservative football does not make any sense to me at all. And if you think about where the Giants sit today and that Joe Judge is having meetings, whether he's going to meet with the general managers or not meet with the general managers, what has happened this season to give you faith that this team has turned around, right? They had 6 games of double-digit losses. When you think about Barkley's not any better, Daniel Jones isn't any better, their offensive line isn't any better. I don't see any direction where this team, other than in press conferences, you feel like they are making steps to move on or to have that winning mentality. It just doesn't look good. And when you talk about trying to bring free agents, when you talk about trying to bring a general manager to this, if he's the coach that you're kind of saddled with, I'm not sure you're going to get the best candidate. So I just question where they are. I understand they don't want to upset the apple cart and hey, listen, we've already had to let go of a coach after 2 years and blah, blah, blah. But Key knows and I know when you're in the locker room, you got to have the trust of those 53 guys who are lining up with you. And what the last 7 or 8 games have shown me is there's not a lot of trust in that locker room. There's not a lot of belief that we're turning the corner and we're right on the cusp of it. And again, I compared it to the Detroit Lions and just the style of play between those two teams. Which team do you think you'd rather go to if you're a free agent comparing those? And I think the decision is easy when you look at it that way. That's not just an indictment on Joe Judge, but the entire organization over these past few years. It just hasn't worked.
Look, Jeff, I understand what you're saying about Joe Judge, right? But I think when you talk about surprised, like Joe Judge still has a job for now. So I'm okay. I understand, you know how these things go. They get rid of the general manager on a soft landing. Now they want to see what's out there, have some conversations. But when you go down to Miami and you all of a sudden yesterday get hit with a rock that Brian Flores is gone. After 3 years, turning things around, he took over for Adam Gase. Do I need to say it again? Adam Gase. He took over for him. So it was a complete turnaround, 160-degree turnaround. Then you think about it from this aspect of it. Ryan Fitzpatrick was there. When he got the job, they went out to hire Jim Caldwell as his offensive coordinator. Jim Caldwell abruptly got sick, had to step down because of health issues. He now wants to get back into coaching. So then they go out and they hire Shan Gailey to be their offensive coordinator. He then convinces Chris Grier, the general manager, to take a shot on Tua as the quarterback. They draft him. They say, great. So now they start off slow. I think they lost about their first 5 games in a row. Now all of a sudden they get better and better and better. The next year they win 10 games. This year they got better and better and better. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was a political move anyway. Chris Grier, they're doing this to each other. Everybody's pointing the finger. There's reports out there that Brian Flores was really kicking the tires and pushing the Deshaun Watson trade. I would too if it all checked out correctly. I know who my quarterback is. He can't take me to the promised land. He may be able to win me 1 or 2 games, but he's going to eventually get me fired. So when I look at it, I said to myself, essentially you fired a coach that was a winning football coach that had turned the program completely around from Adam Gase because your general manager and your owner couldn't get on the same page with the head coach in terms of philosophy, personnel, and what they were doing on the coaching staff. Now you allow not only another man to be out on the streets that happened to be an African American. We only have two, mind you, in the pro football coaching, and that would be Mike Tomlin and Coach Culley at Houston, which they're now looking at and trying to figure out what they want to do with him in the Houston, Texas. It's just crazy to me. One of the biggest surprise of all this year for me in professional sports when it comes to hiring and firing coaches. Makes zero sense. None at all. And wherever he lands at next, he's gonna land a pretty good job.
He's said to be one of the prime coaching candidates for a lot of positions that have opened up, so that's good news for him.
Yeah, Charlie, I was about to say, listen, he ain't going to be unemployed long. I mean, this is a guy that has proven what he can do. And to Key's point, I just want to add this on. Think about the distraction that he had to deal with Fitzpatrick and Tua first, and then Tua and Deshaun Watson or someone else coming into Miami. The way that he kept that locker room unified and battling. Bad offensive line. You know, you had Tua who you're trying to develop and bring along. He got that defense right. And this is the craziest part to me about Flores. I think he was 4-2 against the Patriots. When you hire a head coach, you hire him to first win your division because that's how you get a home playoff game. And so if you see a guy who has made strides in that direction and trying to work his organization back into the playoffs and getting it that way, I'm with you. He will not be unemployed long. And I can tell you that. My surprise, though, the reason I said it was a bigger surprise, I didn't think Joe Judge would make it through Monday after what happened on Sunday. So both are surprises to me. The Judge one's just a little more. But Brian Flores, that dude should be the top candidate for all the teams looking for coaches because of what he can do to come in to fix your organization.
Yeah, and Brian Flores did lead his team to win 8 of their last 9 games. So definitely in a good spot as far as his next job is concerned. Okay, guys, let's keep it moving because 44 years old, showing no signs of slowing down. I'm talking about Mr. Tom Brady.
Oh, I thought you meant me.
Yeah, you too. No, you're definitely not slowing down. But Tom Brady, did you do this recently? He put together a 3-touchdown performance in the 41-17 win in the season finale over the Panthers. The crowd reacted by shouting MVP at the 7-time Super Bowl champ. And Bruce Arians, he's on board with that one.
I think if he doesn't get it, it's a travesty. I mean, most completions ever. 5,000 yards, touchdowns, the whole 9 yards. I mean, to me, it's not even a close race.
A travesty. That is a strong word. Now, Aaron Rodgers kept his lead in the MVP odds over Brady in Week 18, throwing 2 more touchdowns in just 18 attempts against the Lions, finishing 6 short of Brady on the season. So, Keyshawn, all that being said, do you agree with Arians? It would be a travesty if Brady doesn't win MVP.
I mean, I get it. That's his guy and everything. I don't know that it would be a travesty at all. I think they both deserve it, but I think Aaron Rodgers, and hear me out here, I think Aaron Rodgers deserves it a little bit more. And I don't want to call it adversity because it's self-inflicting, everything that went on in the offseason, everything that went on during the season, the whole COVID mess, the misleading. He did that to himself. But what I want to say is when you do things like that and you put this pound of pressure on your back, Charlie and Jeff, you now have to overcome that. Okay, you start off in a slow season against the New Orleans Saints, but since then, all you've been doing is hitting pay dirt on fire constantly, carrying your football team because the MVP means most valuable player. And that is exactly what he's been to the Green Bay Packers. Now, that's not to say that if Tom Brady had to miss some time that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wouldn't fall flat on their face. But I think most people would say if the Bucs are completely healthy and if Tom Brady missed some time, they may be able to figure it out from a defensive standpoint, running the football, having a Mike Evans there, a Gronkowski, when Chris Godwin was healthy, when AB was sane, all of those sort of things made the Buccaneers a much better football team. Aaron Rodgers, if he was off the Green Bay Packers, Man, we're not even having a conversation right now about Green Bay.
Yeah, as
we're
we
talking
saw
about,
on Sunday.
We're probably talking about the damn Chicago Bears winning the game. I mean, winning the division or something. Just being honest.
All right, Key.
Yes.
I love you, man.
Yes.
You're wrong on this one in a big way. I'm not saying travesty. I'm not saying travesty either because Aaron Rodgers had a lights-out year. I'm not taking it away. But if you look at them statistically, they have about the same QBR. They have about the same efficiency rate.
Yes.
Tom Brady has thrown 174 more passes than Aaron Rodgers. He has 1,200 more yards. He has the most touchdowns. By the way, he has the number 2 ranked offense. Green Bay has the 10th. Green Bay has a better run game than Tampa has all season. Green Bay had a better defense this season statistically than Tampa Bay did as well. So the responsibility placed on Tom Brady is more than what was placed on Aaron Rodgers to have to win. He don't have Dillon. He don't have Jones. Fournette's been banged up. Half his receivers are in and out of the lineup all the time. He continues to find ways to win. Gronk was out for a while. Like, think about all the things. You talk about adversity and what he's had to go through. This is the constant. Tom Brady continues to show up week in and week out and produce and perform. And again, his team it requires more of him than what the Green Bay Packers require of Aaron Rodgers. Again, both are fantastic quarterbacks.
I mean, you just saw the numbers. How do you argue with those?
Are you serious, Jeff? You mentioned touchdown interception rate. You act like 37 touchdowns and 43 is that far off. One dude throws 4 interceptions, the other dude throws 12. I mean, like, because
he played the Saints. He played the Saints one time. Brady played them twice, and both of the Saints ate both them dudes up. So we can go ahead and throw some interceptions to really good defenses.
That's more about the Saints' defense. That's not about the quarterbacks. That's just the Saints' defense is really good.
But they took it from both those quarterbacks.
Yeah,
they ate both those quarterbacks up.
So are you telling me a healthy Tampa Bay Buccaneers team minus Tom Brady wouldn't be able to kind of float along?
They haven't been
versus
healthy.
A healthy Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers.
They have not been healthy. It's what has happened this season and what has been asked of Tom Brady as opposed to what's been asked of Aaron Rodgers.
You're acting like Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers have been fully healthy too. They haven't. You know, their secondary was depleted. Okay? Their secondary was depleted. They were missing Randall Cobb for a minute there. I'm just saying. Aaron Jones missed some time.
So you don't think 1,200 yards and the second-ranked offense says anything about that Tom Brady has played slightly better than Aaron Rodgers?
I can't look at the total numbers on statistics and pick an MVP based on that because the situations is such that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is playing from behind a lot of the times, and Brady is throwing the football. It's not saying that they both don't deserve it, but he's pushing the ball down the field where...
That's my point. He's required to do that more.
That's what he's saying. If it wasn't for Brady, they wouldn't be winning these games.
No, Charlie, that's not true. I think they would win some games if Brady wasn't in there. Not all of them, but some because they still could run they still could have ran the football when they had Jones and they had Fournette. Okay, they still have a solid defense. The back end of the defense is not great.
And Jones from Green Bay would be better than what Tampa Tom has.
I don't know about that. Because if you go back and look at the Indian, who won the Indianapolis Colts game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Listen, you're talking about one game. Think about the entire. I'm talking about the season. You're talking yourself into Tom being the MVP.
No, I'm not. Because Leonard Fournette was the guy who carried them against Indy. My whole point is when you have
game.
But we can pick and point to other games.
Was that the one game when Tom Brady had his thumb injury, though? Is that his words? Wasn't that when his thumb was injured?
No. Say it again?
He remember at one point in the season his thumb was injured and he ran the ball more than usual because his throwing thumb was not up to par.
Listen,
I'm giving the MVP to Aaron Rodgers. I don't care what Jeff says.
it ain't.
That's
listen,
it. That's the end of the argument.
You talked yourself into Tom Brady being it.
Well, you know what? Tom Brady certainly was the glue holding Tampa Bay together. But, guys, real quickly, I want to know, who do you see advancing further in the playoffs? Do you think it'll be the Packers, or do you think it'll be Tampa Bay?
I think it's going to be Green Bay.
Tampa Bay has the bye, of course. We have to take that into consideration. But
Green Bay has the bye. Take that in consideration.
I mean, yeah, Green Bay. I'm sorry.
I just look at it's different than a year ago when Tampa Bay went to Green Bay and won. Right? There wasn't a whole lot of fans. This time it'll be completely packed. It's just a different situation.
Yeah.
I don't think Matt LaFleur would take the football out of Aaron Rodgers' hands in the end. And it feels like an easier path for Green Bay. Just feels like an easier path.
Yeah, I agree with the path. I think it's Tampa Bay, though, for me. I picked them early in the season. The only caveat I will say is Fournette has to be back. They got to get JPP back. Some of the guys that are injured for the Buccaneers that may not even play this weekend against their first playoff opponent, they may have to have these guys to be able to really push. I still trust Tom Brady in these big moments, in these big games, but man, without Godwin and now AB, somebody's got to step up. Is it going to be Scotty Miller? Is it Evans? But Fournette is going to be the catalyst. Listen, this guy has averaged over 100 yards rushing per playoff game and a touchdown. That type of productivity's got to be back on the field for them to have any shot. But I think Tampa Bay's still the one if they get healthy.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, let's keep it moving. We have a whole lot more NFL to get to, as you can imagine. So,
woo!
You heard it? Swagoo, you heard it. It is clear. Let me tell you, ain't nobody, when the Colts get in this weekend, ain't nobody in the AFC want to match up with them. You think about, everybody talks about Dak's in a slump. We ain't worried about our quarterback being in a slump. We're going to hand that ball off to Jonathan Taylor, and we're going to pound you and continue to pound you and continue to pound you. And then on the defensive side, we're going to shut you down, and then we're going to take the ball away from you.
Oh.
Jeff.
Oh.
Damn, Jeff.
Why?
Man, you must feel real bad there, ex-coach.
Jeff, it was all bad.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I sit there and I listen to myself and the passion that I spoke with, and I wholeheartedly believe that. I wholeheartedly believed everything I was saying. When I was getting up there, I was preaching. I felt it. I felt the spirit like I was in, man. And when that game kicked off, I wanted to rip my TV off the wall. I wanted to throw that thing. My wife had to say, hey, this is not the example we can set for our kid. I'm going to rip it down, smash it, take a picture of it and tweet it, do something. I want to bust this camera, really. That's how upset I am about the way this thing finished out. I have never seen a team with a 2-touchdown, predicted victory just melt the way they did. And so, listen, I said it. We ain't got to worry about our quarterback. We're going to hand it off to JT. Well, we did not. I think he had 15 touches or something.
He had 77 yards.
I mean, like, our offensive line played bad, gave up sacks. Our defensive line got pushed around. We didn't get any pressure. Listen, I never saw that coming. Carson Wentz, maybe it throws a late interception, we don't win. But, man, to get physically housed the way we did, really from the kickoff on, from the first drive on, we ushered them in and then played terrible. It's literally one of the most painful things I've had to watch as a non-participant for a team that I cheer for. It broke me. It broke me. I'm just being real.
Yeah, and Jeff, listen, this hits very close to home, but all that being said, looking at this game, would you say that this was the biggest disappointment of the entire NFL season?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This team had 2 weeks against the Raiders and against the Jags to get into the playoffs. They were injured, so the first part of the season really was irrelevant for me. They were so banged up. They had COVID issues. They had all kinds of issues going on. They couldn't get their team. Once they got to rolling, I thought, absolutely, this team's going to get in. Very similar to the 49ers. They're going to be a team to be reckoned with. When you have the number 1 pick in the draft is who the Jaguars are selecting. When you're playing that team to get into the playoffs and you don't get into the playoffs, absolutely this is the most disappointing. Like, there's no other way. You had 2 chances to beat 2 teams that you should have beaten, and your quarterback doesn't play well, and this is why you sign that quarterback, right? Yeah. For games like this, when if you can't get it done, there's some awe-inspiring play to do something to get you out of it. We answered no call the last 2 weeks. Played flat, got beat. Most disappointing for sure.
It's your fault, Jeff. You should have been like Michael Irvin, down on the sidelines, hanging out with the Cowboys like he do, hanging out with the coach, patting them on the back and firing them up. Take a page out the Playmaker book next year.
Yeah, Jeff, come on, get on it, please. We need you. We can't have this happen again. Hey, so my next question, Jeff, because you mentioned that their whole reason that they brought on Carson Wentz was to win big games like this, and he couldn't get the job done. He played horrible. So, Jeff, should the Colts now move on from Carson Wentz?
Yeah, I think they do. And again, I don't know the cap implications quite yet. You know, I know that's still got to be worked out. I don't know the exact numbers. But for what you brought him in for, I mean, you think about the Tennessee Titans loss, the moments that were in the grasp of the team to win, and that he doesn't make enough plays. I understand he had a great throw late in the Arizona game when we were down all the offensive line, but consistently throughout the season, when the moments mattered most, he really didn't step up and do things that you would expect that type of quarterback with that type of investment to make. And look, this is not just an indictment on Carson Wentz, because again, the Jacksonville game is not just on him. That whole team got beat up. But when you ask an organization to take on a player like Carson Wentz, there has to be huge upside. And it's like he didn't throw an interception on the road, I think, until Jacksonville. And then he throws two. I mean, it's just like those type of conversations, when the moments matter most, that cannot be the position that you're concerned about. You have to have, hey, we're going to ride through this. He might not be the greatest, kind of the Jimmy G mentality. He might not be the greatest, but when that drive, that signature drive has to be had, when the Rams and the 49ers just played, Garoppolo steps up and makes that drive. That's what you have to have for Wentz. He doesn't have to carry you all season, but man, you got to have him in certain moments, put the team on his back and carry that. He did not do it really in any season or any point of games this season, in my opinion. So I think if you're the Colts, you're looking for the next person to do that.
Jeff, do me a favor, though, really, in all honesty. Take your heart out of it. You play center. Take the fan part of it. You're smart. They're not moving on from Carson Wentz because there's nobody you can replace him with. You cannot move on from a guy who just got there, that you put all your eggs and all the eggs in that basket, saying to yourself, he can get us there. Yeah, he had some up and down moments this year, but let's face it, this is his first year, and I know you say, what's the same system they ran in Philly? It's really not the same system. There are pieces of the system. He's still getting used to the wide receivers, the offensive line calls. He's still trying to get used to everything that goes on. I would say after this season, you evaluate him, you self-evaluate in the offseason, you sit him down, you go over all the things that you need to go over, and going into next season, he's your guy. Maybe you draft a guy, maybe you find a veteran that you put behind him just in case the seas start to get a little rough over the course of the 2022 season. Then you make that decision, but you don't abruptly make a decision based on a loss to Jacksonville and one to the Raiders when you had playoff implications, when you gave up so much to go get a guy that you believed in at the start of the season. You're smart enough to know that, Jeff. You know better than that. And I understand your heart, your soul is with the Indianapolis Colts, and you feel a certain way.
You know it.
Right now, you have to remove yourself from that and look at it objectively. They're not going to move on from him, at least this year.
I never played for the Colts, and I still tend to agree with Jeff here, Key.
No, you may agree with them, but you also got to realize, what are they going to get? What are you going to get that's better than that you honestly can get?
So here's my question to you, Key. If you could go get a Cousins, and I'm not even using the Aaron Rodgers, because we know, but I'm just saying, if you could go get a Kirk Cousins type quarterback, do you think that would perform better in the Colts offense than what Carson Wentz just provided you?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think that you can go get a Kirk Cousins and then implement him into the offense and expect for him to carry you where you're trying to go after Carson Wentz had he had a solid season, one of his best seasons he's had in the NFL, and all of a sudden you're going to implement Kirk Cousins and learning a whole new system and all that over again. I don't think that'll work for you.
But this is my point to that. And listen, and they may have to stay with him because of money and because of development, all those things. So, Chris Ballard has to make that call, Jim Irsay and Frank, and I get that, right? But this is what I would say. You look for ascension from a quarterback. Like, when in those moments did he really separate himself from just the average quarterback in our game? Because we gave up a first round and a third round to get him, so you're invested, right? I get that part. But my question is, in the last 2 weeks, when it matters most, and you and I both know next year's not going to be any different. You're going to get down to where that guy has to make those plays. Was there anything that you saw from this season that makes you go, yeah, he's the guy that I want throwing that ball in the fourth quarter of that game down by 7? That's the part that I question. I question that there wasn't anything that I looked at and go, man, he really changed my opinion of how he played and that he elevated the team. I just didn't see the elevation. That's my only concern is you are pot committed, and now I don't want it to make a bad situation even worse. I think you really have to evaluate it.
They're definitely going to be evaluating. They do have a good amount of cap space, though, according to Spotrac.com, the 7th most in the NFL. Obviously, letting go of Carson Wentz frees up even more money. But also, when you look at it, the situation's just bad all around because not only have the Colts digressed, but also the rest of the AFC and really even the AFC South has gone uphill this season. So all around, it's not looking very good for the Colts. But
not good.
You know what? This is depressing enough. So let's just leave it right there, guys. Okay. All right. Moving on here on the show. Mac Jones has seen his ups and he's seen his downs this season. But find out if these guys are confident in the young quarterback for the playoffs or if they think he's hit his rookie wall. 22 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists in last night's loss to the Blazers. And afterwards, the opponent's coach, Chauncey Billups, says he believes Brooklyn Nets guard Kyrie is the most skilled player ever to play at his position. So, Keyshawn, quick take. Do you agree? I do agree. I think he is the most skilled player at his position. You could always point to Allen Iverson, and you can look back at his career and some of the things that he's been able to do. But when you're thinking about a guy who took off several months in basketball and then decided to join his team and drop in 22 points and 9 of 21 from the field goal range, 8 boards and 4 assists, he's going to continue to just keep getting better over time. This is why I think he is the most skilled guy ever in the history of the NBA at that position. Okay, now moving back to the NFL, the Patriots facing division foe Buffalo in the wild card this season. They've split their games 1-1. So, Jeff, are you confident rookie Mac Jones can lead the Patriots to victory in Buffalo?
No, I don't think he leads them to victory, Charlie, but I don't think it's going to be a Mac Jones issue. I think when you look at the way that the Bills are built and designed, I think Josh Allen ends up getting the victory. But I think Mac Jones can make enough plays to keep the game tight. And I think the way Belichick is going to scheme it, it's going to be good. But I think ultimately the Bills get the win just because of the totality of their team.
Okay, yeah, we'll see what type of adjustments Bill Belichick can make. But, guys, we're going to leave it right there because we're going to get to break and then come back with a whole lot more. As Stephen A. likes to say, are the Cowboys just an accident waiting to happen? Find out who here thinks the Cowboys season ends this weekend. Plus, it is all... Still so much more to come in this second hour of First Take. The mouth of the Southpaw Feinbaum stopping by to talk about the Dogs tied and what Nick Saban does from here. Plus, Keyshawn's guy, Derek Carr, faces off against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. But you might be surprised who these guys have more confidence in come game time. All that and so much more coming up. But first, let's talk about last night. A huge win for the Bulldogs. Big up to them, your new national champs. From field goal fest to offensive clinic for Georgia. Stetson Bennett in the fourth quarter, throwing 2 touchdowns in that last quarter and finishing 17 of 26 passes for 224 yards. The nail in the coffin, Alabama coming in the form of a Bryce Young pick 6 with 54 seconds to go. Stetson Bennett, though, thankful the defense was able to undo his costly turnover just seconds prior.
I mean, I just knew there was going to be no way we were going to let a turnover like that stop us from winning a national championship. There's no way I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to be the reason we lost tonight.
You lost this game against Alabama in 2017. How much sweeter does that make this win?
Well, that one will be with me for a long time, but this one will be with me for much longer. I'm proud of the University of Georgia, the support we get there. A lot of credit to Alabama, Coach Saban. They had a lot of injuries. You know, they lost Jamison Williams in a tough situation, but our kids kept fighting and never doubted.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
You know, these two guys that are sitting up here, they're not defined by one game. These guys played great for us all year. They're great competitors. They were great leaders on this team. I just want to thank them for that and let everybody know how proud I am of these two guys.
All right, the name is Stetson Bennett. I don't want to put any disrespect on his name because he did his thing last night. Sam Acho's back here with us. But before we get into this game, Jeff, you've got a divided household right now. You know, your family's from Georgia, but you also have a daughter at Alabama right now. So what's it like being at home?
It was painful last night. My daughter, she and I were talking and texting, and my wife, and obviously we're pulling for Bama. It's hard, though, when everybody else in the family is cheering for the Dogs. So, but ultimately, it was a heck of a ball game. They made it, I'll be honest, Bama made it much closer than I thought with all the injuries they had. I didn't think they would keep it as close as they did. So great, but great performance by Stetson Bennett and the entire Georgia football team, man. It was a heck of a game to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's where our question comes in, because you mentioned the injuries on Alabama side. Bryce Young without two of his top receivers. But then you also look at the fact that Stetson Bennett played really well last night. It was a complete reversal from the SEC championship. So, Jeff, last night, was it more about Bama's injuries or was it about Stetson Bennett?
Ooh, I'm going to go both and, Charlotte. I'm not sure you can do one without the other. I mean, in all honesty, without Bama's two top receivers, they had one of their top corners out that we saw Georgia basically take advantage of. But they were banged up on the offensive line. I mean, listen, it's a game of attrition. And ultimately, you heard Saban say at halftime, we got talent, we just don't have experience. They're going to get experience tonight. And you saw those players drop balls in the second half. I mean, Bryce Young put the ball where it needed to be. They don't make the catches. They don't make the plays. That's where I think experience comes in. But don't minimize how important Bennett was to that victory. That throw late in the game was spectacular. The performance he had to step up after that really iffy fumble / recovery, which was, basically a miracle. He overcame a bunch too. So, I think you have to have a both and in this conversation. It can't be one or the other, because we know that life is much more complicated than that.
That's true, and I agree with everything you're saying. Yeah, he made a nice throw or two throughout the course of the game, but when you factor in injuries, as I tried to tell Sam Acho, he won't listen to me, you factor in those injuries. On top of factoring in the injuries, the experience level. You talk about a drop ball.
Yeah.
Let's not even focus in on the drop ball. Having played receiver a very long time in college as well as in the pros, the pass at the back of the end zone, and I don't remember exactly what receiver it was, he drug his foot out of bounds. Mm-hmm. If he goes dead leg like an experienced receiver would do, just fall, bam. Yeah. That's 6 in itself. So when you start to just look at certain things, you have to factor in the injuries. You cannot just ignore the injuries. And yeah, Bennett did a good job, but let's face it, the Georgia Bulldogs didn't win that damn game because of him. Okay, that's not why they won. They won because that defense was relentless. They harassed Bryce Young all day long. They made him hold on to the ball longer. And the reason he was holding on to the ball, because of inexperience at the receiver position to uncover so he can release the football. You have to look at all of those sort of things. And again, I'll say it because I don't want people thinking that I'm hating on the young man because he was a walk-on. Give him his credit. I get all that. Great story. Yeah, he deserves it. He played really, really well for them. But they didn't win because of him. They won because of Kirby Smart and that damn defense and those injuries to Alabama.
So now I'm just confused, Key. Now I'm just confused. You were all over the map because you started off by saying, man, I agree with everything Jeff Saturday just said. Jeff Saturday just said they won both and because of one, Stetson Bennett, and also the injuries.
I don't agree
That's
with
what
that
Jeff
part.
Saturday said. That's what he said. That's exactly what he said.
But I don't agree with that
so that's
part.
Number one.
I agree with the injuries in the defense and the offensive line. That part I agree with.
Good. Okay, great. So now that we're all clear, so it wasn't because of Stetson Bennett, according to you, it's because of the injuries and because of they played better. But which actually makes sense now, your position, because your position was after you agreed with Jeff Saturday, at least partially, then you unagreed or maybe you disagreed. I don't know. after that, then you went and said Stetson Bennett made a nice throw or two, right? You said so.
Yes.
In that phrase, I hear disrespect. I don't think Jeff Saturday, Charlie, everybody at home, they hear disrespect. He made a nice throw or two. He didn't just make a nice throw or two. This dude balled. This dude made plays. After that fumble in the fourth quarter, this dude went on a tear. He said, I'm determined. I was going to make sure that our team was not going to lose that game. And he went 4 for 4 with a dime on a blitz, pressure in his face in the end zone to an inexperienced receiver to win the game. And so if you're going to agree with Jeff Saturday, which you did, but then you didn't, then agree with Jeff Saturday. But if you're not, then I got something for you. Since you don't agree with Jeff Saturday, since it wasn't because of Stetson Bennett, I'm sitting here thinking, okay,
twisting my words, man. Stop. You're not going to listen. You're not getting ready to sit up here on national television and twist my words. Yes, I agree with Jeff Saturday, except for the quarterback being the guy that won the damn game
Jeff
for him.
said both, so he took both sides.
I'm agreeing, Charlie. I'm agreeing with the injuries to the receivers. I'm agreeing to the offensive line. I'm agreeing for them taking advantage of Jackson, who replaced the starting cornerback. They found that duck and they shot him down. That's what I'm agreeing to. I'm not sitting here and telling the world that the reason the Georgia Bulldogs won the national championship is because we want to make Stetson Bennett the hero. I'm not doing that because that's not right.
Key.
That is a damn lie.
Well, Key, it looks like the camera's not agreeing with you. They got a side angle, a front angle. They got so many different angles. So let me just address why.
That ain't on me. That's not on me. That's on the director.
All these angles. Come on.
Let me address, and the director's a Georgia fan, right? So the director's probably on your head right now. Let me address why you don't think that Stetson Bennett is the reason why this team won, right? Because I, like many, was in your shoes not too long ago. I had that thought that, man, this doesn't make sense. You have a walk-on quarterback. You have a dude who's not big. He's not strong. He's quick. He's fast. People don't give him that credit. But he's not the five-star. He's not the guy who you would expect to lead a franchise, to lead a team to a national championship. So it just doesn't make sense. In psychology, this is called cognitive dissonance. It's when something is happening and it's not computing. It's like, man, I don't understand why this is happening, so I'm just going to default to the other thing. Well, it wasn't because of him. It was because of everybody else. But you, Keyshawn Johnson, you understand the quarterback position. You understand football. You understand the receiver position. You understand a lot of things. And you understand that this dude, Stetson Bennett, played lights out, not just in this game, but all season long. The one game that he struggled in, the one game that Stetson Bennett struggled was in the SEC championship game against Alabama. That was 38 days ago. And now 37 or 38 days later, Stetson Bennett balled. And you, Keyshawn, just like much of America, much of Twitter, doesn't want to believe it, doesn't want to agree with it. All of Twitter yesterday in the first half, really the first three quarters, all up until the fumble was saying, bench Stetson Bennett, put in JT Daniels. This dude can't do it. But he did. And so, just because he don't look like you or look like the five-star, look like the big, tall, fast, strong guy that's supposed to lead his team to a national championship doesn't mean we can't give this man his flowers, give this man his credit, which you, according to your words, are not giving him.
Man, I'm going to tell you one thing. I don't give a damn if he was a 4 or 5 or 3 or 2. Doesn't make a difference to me. Okay, he's the starting quarterback of the Georgia Bulldogs. He won the national title, but you're not going to sit up here and try to convince me the reason they won the game is because of Stetson Bennett. You're not going to do that. If you know anything about football, you know damn well he ain't the reason because he made a throw to a backup receiver on a backup corner that the receiver was better than. If you don't stop, boy.
Key. No, Key. Listen, I gotta disagree with you on this one now. They turn it over, they're losing the game, they get the ball back, and he comes back and answers with a touchdown. And you and I both know it don't matter. He still has to find the weak link, and he still got to put the ball in the right spot to make that catch. He did all those things, and even the Bauer, when he throws that ball out late for the little, basically a lateral that Bowers takes to the touchdown and scores, he had to make those plays. And whether you like him, dislike him, that is cause for winning a football game.
Well,
when it's placed on your quarterback, he's got to put the ball in the right spot. The defense did its part. Everybody did their part. But he had to play the role, and he had to make the plays. He made it. You can't take that away and say he didn't win it when he put the ball on the money.
He did a good job at leading his team. But when you look at the relentless defense, they got to pick. Ringo got to pick 6 to win the game. Ain't nothing to do with no damn Bennett.
But he had them a lead by making the throw to get them the lead. They weren't losing. Alabama was trying to go down and tie.
If you don't stop,
Jeff, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do to convince Keyshawn Johnson.
You're not going to convince me.
Keyshawn Johnson refuses to believe that a walk-on quarterback, a guy who's not the biggest with the biggest arm, Keyshawn refuses to believe that this guy can be the reason. Even though he was the reason that they lost, according to Keyshawn, the reason they lost.
Listen, I don't think he's taking away from that fact.
Charlie, this is called cognitive dissonance. It's not going to compute in his brain. He needs to grow 5 inches. He needs to have a bigger arm.
Listen, the defense was great. Stetson Bennett was also great.
He's the reason.
Let's give props to the entire Georgia squad. Okay, the defense was fabulous. Stetson Bennett was also great.
Yes.
He's the only walk-on to ever beat a Nick Saban-led team except for Brian Gracie, which was back in 1997 of Michigan. So props to Georgia, your national champions. Let's leave it there until wild card weekend. And Stephen A. Smith, probably smiling somewhere because the Cowboys may just be on upset alert. According to Caesars Sportsbook, the 49ers are 3-point underdogs going into Dallas, giving them the shortest odds at an upset on wild card weekend. So, Jeff, you're looking at the spread. Do you think the Cowboys are the team most likely to be upset?
Yeah, I do. And I think when you think about the matchup, when you get to the playoffs, everything's about matchups. And what the San Francisco 49ers want to do offensively and defensively matches up pretty well with the Cowboys and what they want to do. And so when you just watched the game last weekend from the 49ers and the Rams, Jimmy G had that signature drive, right? Down late's got to go make plays. He made enough plays to get them over the hump to finally get to get the win. That's a big deal for this organization. If you think about the Cowboys, the last 5 games, 4 of them have been NFC East opponents, which they have demolished. All good. That's what they do. They're 6-0, and I think they got a 22-point victory lead or something over each of those opponents. The problem is you throw Arizona right in the middle that came to Dallas and put it on them pretty good, and they played a similar style of what San Francisco wants to play. That should give Cowboys fans some level of concern. When I think about Dak Prescott, I think he'll play well. I don't take anything away from Dak Prescott. I think he'll continue to do what he knows how to do. They lack physicality and they lack explosive plays right now in Dallas. That's concerning for me. So I would tell you, if there is a team that I would say, hey, be on alert, make sure you play your best game to get yourself out of this first round of the playoffs. Just because of the matchup itself, for me, I would say the Cowboys.
Look, Jeff, I had a chance to watch, just like you, the Cowboys played the Philadelphia Eagles the last game of the year. Philadelphia obviously didn't have all their guys in there, but I like what Dallas was able to do. It looked crisp, despite not having Michael Parsons in the lineup. He'll be back against the San Francisco 49ers, and I clearly understand what you're saying. But when you look at the San Francisco 49ers against the Rams in a win-to-get-in football game, they emptied the kitchen sink to beat the Rams.
Sure.
Okay, and Matthew Stafford was trying to give them the football game, and they wind up emptying the kitchen sink. I don't know that they're going to – I know what Vegas is saying, but I don't know that they can go to Dallas and take care of business the way that they did against the Rams, because I don't know that the Dallas Cowboys will allow them to. And I know everybody's a Cowboy America team. Stephen A. probably sitting, like Charlie said, sitting at home just grinning and laughing and doing all those sort of things. In the end, the Dallas Cowboys understand what's on the line. Dak Prescott is a $100 million quarterback, and you know best, Jeff, when you pay a quarterback this type of money, including an offensive line that's probably $400 million, an offensive lineman, 2 receivers that's another $20 million, a running back that's another $20 million. When you got all of that in DeMarcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons and Diggs, they got the better roster and the better team. Do they have the better coach? is the real question. Do they have the better coach?
You think that's
is
all it comes
Mike
down to?
McCarthy going to screw it up or take him to the next step? I think he takes him to the next step.
You think Mike McCarthy is the only disadvantage that the Cowboys have in this matchup?
I do. They got the better quarterback. Essentially, they probably got the better running back. They got the better receivers. Maybe on the defensive side of the ball. They got the better. If Zeke is cooking and Pollard is cooking.
Deebo Samuel, come on.
But Deebo Samuel's a Swiss Army knife. He's not a running back.
That's the problem. That's the problem. Is right now neither Zeke nor Pollard have played well. Their offensive line has not done a great job in run blocking for this football team. They've gone to a full zone. It has not showed up. Kellen Moore's tried to get creative. They've used a ton of different offensive linemen and combinations trying to find the right one. I will say this. The things that San Francisco does well presents a problem for the Cowboys. The Cowboys want to rush the passer with Lawrence, Gregory, Parsons, and they can do it as well as anybody in the NFL. But you're not going to have a quarterback who's sitting at 6 yards trying to throw it for San Francisco. They're going to boot. They're going to waggle. They're going to run downhill. They're going to use Deebo Samuel in the backfield. They're going to split him out. They're going to use Ayuk. They're going to try to use Kittle. They're going to use all different types of combinations and motions to get the Dallas Cowboys to play on their heels. They're not going to play a game where they're going to drop back and let Jimmy Garoppolo lose the game by turning it over. They're going to make Dallas have to go the long way to score. They're not going to give up big plays. And they present pass rushing issues for that Cowboys offensive line, especially with Tyron Smith. With his injuries, he's got to stay healthy and play well in these playoffs. That starts this week. When you think about what the 49ers can do defensive line-wise, rushing the quarterback, I'm just telling you from the matchup, there's a reason it's at 3. The matchup presents problems if, and it's a big if Jimmy G can play good football, not great, but good football, the 49ers will have a chance to win this game in the fourth quarter. That is a concern if you're the Dallas Cowboys. Because, again, I don't think that Dak himself is going to play bad. I think he'll play lights out. But will that be enough with as many touches as they get to win the game? I'm not predicting the 49ers are winning yet. I haven't even picked the game. But I'm telling you, it's a problem for the Cowboys because of the matchup.
But, Key, you sound like you have more confidence in Dallas than Jeff
Absolutely.
does. So what would you say is the ceiling for the Cowboys in the playoffs?
I think they could go to Green Bay. And I think they go to Green Bay, and then at that point, it's a coin toss.
Wow. Okay, so you have a lot of confidence.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely, I do. They've gone to Green Bay before.
Yeah.
Think about it several years ago when they went into Green Bay in the Des Bryant catch, not catch sort of thing. Green Bay played them again in the playoffs. Not Brett Favre, geez. Aaron Rodgers had to make the Brett Favre throw at the end to get him out of it. So when you look at it, I think that is a good matchup for the Dallas Cowboys and not so great for the Green Bay Packers. But that's just me. I don't, Jeff knows.
Yeah,
it's just me.
Listen, I will be honest. I have lost my confidence in the Cowboys when I've watched their offense. They dominate against NFC East teams, and I get that. They light them up, and they played the Eagles JV squad and blew them out. I get all, and they did look sharp. They did look crisp. When they play non-NFC East teams, they don't put up those same numbers. They're not physical and they're not explosive. That's concerning. I wanted to see Amari Cooper have a much bigger season this year than he has. He has to step up in the playoffs. The chemistry between he and Dak is vital if they're going to go. CeeDee Lamb has proved it, but with the injuries on the outside, this is a big game for these guys. I ain't writing home with these guys quite yet with you, Key.
All right.
And this really is a rivalry renewed. I mean, everyone can probably, at least here, remember the rivalry between the Cowboys and the Niners in the 90s.
Heck
and
yeah.
Kyle Shanahan said that was a rivalry that really shaped his childhood. With the hilarious part, he said a lot of his team members have no idea about this rivalry because they were born in the 2000s.
That's right.
Making all of us feel very old today. Okay, let's keep it moving because we are getting back to that national championship game because we are paging the mouth of the South. We've got more on Georgia's big win against Alabama and what it means for this rivalry.
The Georgia fans, they have waited 4 decades for a championship. They've been denied 4 trophies by Saban.
Got a lot to go and prove. Make a move, make a move.
Bennett launching. Touchdown, Georgia! And intercepted all the way to the end zone. And Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
Our guys have accomplished something special, and as they say, they've become legendary.
Well, obviously nobody better to discuss an all-SEC national championship game than the mouth of the South and the voice of the Paul Feinbaum Show, Paul Feinbaum. So, Paul, thanks for being here with us. We have a lot to talk about to you about. First of all, look, no one really was predicting it was going to go this way. We spoke last week. None of us said this. Kirby Smart, though, finally getting over the hump, knocking off his former boss, Nick Saban. So, Paul, what is the significance of this win for the Georgia program?
It's earth-shattering, Charlie, because this is something that a lot of people really didn't think could happen, at least in the age of Nick Saban. And I think that's what makes this even more significant. If Saban had retired in 2 or 3 years and Kirby Smart then won a title, it would have still counted. But in some people's minds, it would have been discounted. But when you go up against your boss, the greatest coach of all time, and you beat him, and you don't just beat him, you run over him in the fourth quarter. It is something that will live forever. I remember that national championship in Georgia in 1980, and what was interesting is the next 2 years they lost in the final game. They could have won 3 national championships in a row, and it just became a curse. And we know what happened 4 years ago with the walk-off between Tua and Devontae Smith. And a lot of people, even though we all said the same thing, Georgia is the better team, it was hard to go against Nick Saban. And I think all of these reasons have made this one of the most significant wins for any school in recent memory.
Paul, you were on First Take last week kind of describing the doubters in Stetson Bennett's performance and if he could, in fact, lead the Georgia Bulldogs to a national title. Well, I guess he participated, in my opinion, in leading them to a national championship last night. What do you make of his performance?
Well, considering he was 3rd or 4th string a year ago, and considering that all of us talked about J.T. Daniels as a Heisman favorite about 5 months ago, it's significant. And I mean, he had a moment in that game, Keyshawn, that could have lived in infamy, but he recovered. And I think that's the important part. Is he going to go on and be a first-round pick? No. I think he's got a better chance of being a billionaire living off of this moment than I do him ever taking a snap in the NFL. No, I mean, listen, Charlie, I live in the South my whole life. When you win a national championship and do something that hasn't happened in most people's lifetime, the cliche is you'll never have to buy another drink again. Forget that. We're way past that for Stetson Bennett the fourth. Stetson Bennett can do whatever he wants. He can host a show. He can have an insurance company. He can become an investment banker. And wherever he goes, people will follow. I really believe that was one of the most life-changing moments I've ever seen. You see it in life-changing in a matter of, well, maybe now he's a first-round pick. Life-changing for him in that his name is going to be on everything in the state of Georgia forever.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely going to be a hero for a very long time. But Bryce Young, he probably does have a very promising football career ahead of him. But he had a little bit of a hard time last night. And, we're not sure exactly what we want to attribute it to. But one of the facts remains he played most of the game without Jamison Williams and all of it without John Mechie. So even at a school as talented as Alabama, how much of a challenge is that going to be for Bryce to overcome?
Well, it was a big problem last night, and everyone, including Kirby Smart, pointed that out. But I think as we move to the next page and to the next year, it won't be a big problem because he'll spend all the offseason working with a lot of talented receivers, and Keyshawn knows that better than I do. But, he didn't have to wonder whether the receiver would be there or not, or would catch the ball or not. He put it up, the receiver went and got it. Last night that didn't happen. It was hard to watch considering how great he has been all year. But ultimately, a lot of bad things happened to Alabama, and they had not happened for a long time. They had injuries across the board, not an excuse. But I think if Jamison Williams had not been hurt, we might have had a different result.
Paulie, let's look ahead. Nick Saban, obviously, he's not a spring chicken, and you got to go out there and you got to recruit and you got to do all those sort of things. Do you see him slowing down at all, or will we be talking about Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide this time next year?
I don't know why he would slow down now, and for this reason. He did not really have the best team this year. Georgia did. He'll have the best team starting next season. He'll have a lot of seasoned veterans. He's got the two best players from this team on that team. And when you come back with the best offensive player in the country, Keyshawn, and I think the best defensive player in Will Anderson Jr., you're really doing something. On top of that, he's had top 2 or 3 recruiting classes over the last, lifetime at Alabama. And, the projections are coming out this morning. Alabama will be number 1. In Vegas, Alabama will be number 1. So you tell me, what sense would it make for Nick Saban, who looked really good last night when I saw him, 70, you can look a lot of different ways at 70. He looks like a very young 70, and I think he'll keep going. He understands the machinations of what happened last night. Nick Saban is a smart guy. And I think he would have a hard time leaving 2 players like Anderson and Bryce Young on the table for someone else.
Paul, the only thing louder than you in the South is that dog behind you, man. Like, put a muzzle on that thing.
That dog had Alabama minus the points last night. He's not happy.
Yeah, I mean, it is all about the dogs today, so what do you expect? I like it. Okay, Paul, you're sticking with us, so hang tight, everybody. We still got a lot more on the way. We're still talking about the national championship game because Bryce Young's performance this season probably had a... Bryce Young had a record-breaking sophomore season after taking over as the starter. He passed Mac Jones for the single-season passing record and broke Tua's 2018 record for most pass touchdowns for most in Alabama history. Now, Young also won the 2021 Heisman Trophy, going back-to-back with former Bama teammate Devontae Smith. He became the first Alabama quarterback to ever win the Heisman after Tua and Jones each earned finalist nods in recent years. And then last night, where he struggled in his rematch against the Georgia defense, especially after the injury to wide receiver Jamison Williams. He had his first career game with multiple interceptions on a school record 57 pass attempts. So when he does become draft eligible, the Heisman Award winner looks to join the list of Alabama QBs who came before him, now starting for NFL teams. Okay, so there's quite a few of them, and there's really no bad picks on the list you see right in front of you. But Jeff, out of all of these, which one of these Bama quarterbacks would you choose to start your NFL team with?
I'd go Bryce Young. Look, I like what this kid has, man. I mean, I know you said it's, his performance last night was lacking. I disagree. I mean, I think this kid put the ball where it needed to be. He didn't have receivers that knew what they were doing, and when they didn't catch the ball. Like, he stood in the pocket, took a lot of shots, very tough, did everything that you would ask a kid to do in that situation. And you could tell he was frustrated, but he held it within himself the majority of time. But this kid, I mean, I think it was Alabama had 8 of the top 30-something players that left last year with Mac Jones and that talented group. For him to rebuild this team as quickly as they did and have a shot at the national championship, by the way, with a very injured football team, man, how could you not love what this guy has? I mean, his demeanor, his poise in the pocket, everything that he's shown me, even the comeback win, earlier in the season, just shows you this guy's got what it takes. He's got the moxie. I like what he does.
Keyshawn, you agree with that?
I like Bryce Young, but I love Jalen Hurts, especially if you think about what he was able to do at Oklahoma. And, maybe because I've seen him enough at Alabama, Oklahoma, now I've seen him in the pros, but I think when he could just do a lot more. Plus, on top of that, he has a better body for the next level. He's thicker. Okay, his ability to throw the football, he's getting better at it. We already know what his legs is about. We know that he's a leader. His mind, when you start getting into the smaller bodies, as you know, Jeff, that thing is rough on you. When you're a small quarterback like a Bryce Young or a Tua, you stay in the training room. When you're a thick body like a Jalen Hurts, you are there to help the team. You're not sitting in the tub to try to get back to help the club.
Well, this has been a treat listening to both of you, and you're both wrong. Mac Jones is the obvious answer. What's so remarkable about this question is that we are talking about the last 4 Alabama quarterbacks, and we wonder why Nick Saban is sitting in the position that he's in. That's really what I'm taking from this conversation, because we're quibbling over hairs here. I think I'm going with Mac a little bit because I haven't seen what we have seen from Bryce Young in the NFL, and we saw him last night with receivers that were not NFL quality, like Mac Jones had last year and obviously this year. It's the one that we haven't heard mentioned yet is the one that was declared the greatest quarterback in Alabama history 3 years ago by almost everyone, and that was Tua. So to me, that's the fact that Tua is not being mentioned very prominently here is really the answer, and it says a great deal about where he has gone in a couple of years.
Yes. So Paul, on that note, what do you think is the future for Tua? You think he's the long-term answer for the Dolphins?
I don't, and I hate to say that because I sat here a couple of years ago extolling his virtues because I believed in him, but ultimately some of the same issues that befell him in college are bothering him in the pros to even a larger degree. So I'm an analyst in college football. I love the NFL. I'm not as smart as well, nobody's as smart as Keyshawn Johnson.
I knew he was going to say that. I knew he was going to say
that. So I'd be looking around down in Miami.
Yeah, I think they are going to take a look, Paul and Jeff. Right now he's there, but if something comes along that's better, they're certainly going to move on for him. And this is
Deshaun Watson better?
A clear indication. You mentioned Charlie, Deshaun Watson. It tells you right then and there. Yes. Brian Flores was basically Deshaun Watson basically helped Flores see the door because they couldn't acquire him based on a number of things, and that's what Flores wanted to do. Chris Greer obviously wasn't on board as much as we have thought, and now look where the Miami Dolphins are. They're going to be looking for a quarterback real soon come free agency.
Yeah, listen, I could agree with you more. Like, this is really what probably sent Flores packing. And Keyshawn, you just said it. Like, Chris Greer believes that Tua's the guy. But what's crazy to me is he had to beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick was playing good, and they basically handed him the job, which you feel like probably came down from the top. And then as it's gone on, they seemed like they wanted to replace him. And whether it was Flores or Greer or Ross or whoever, however it looked, it always felt like they're trying to move on to somebody they feel like can do something more for their franchise. Now, can Tua continue to develop as a quarterback and become a very good quarterback? I believe that's possible. But right now in the NFL, when you're at that 9-10 win type team where Miami is, nobody's patient. They want to see that quarterback take that step, take that team to the next level. He has not done that. And look, their offensive line is not good. I'm not trying to say it's all his fault. They do have good positions around him with speed, but that offensive line has to get better for any quarterback. Mm-hmm. But when I looked at it, there's nothing about – I could understand why Flores wanted to move on. There's nothing about his game in the NFL that says, man, he's going to hoist this team on his shoulders and carry you to that 2 or 3 victories that you need from your quarterback if you want to be a playoff caliber team. Just hasn't happened yet.
Well, Deshaun Watson wasn't going to play this season regardless, so I don't see why that should rest on Brian Flores' shoulder. But, Keyshawn, with that, I want to ask you, Tua, you think if he doesn't play for the Dolphins next year, where does he go? What is his ceiling? Is he a starter still?
I think he is a starter in the National Football League, but he has to be with a team like that is asking to run the ball, play solid defense, and for him to make 1 or 2 nice throws in a game. That's who he is. He is not, you are not looking at Aaron Rodgers. You are not looking at a guy who is one of those type of quarterbacks that is going to be the lead reason you win games, the lead reason you go to the Super Bowl. Right. He is a piece to a team, and that's okay. There is nothing wrong with that. I won a Super Bowl with a quarterback named Brad Johnson that didn't make the mistakes, did everything right when we needed him to, made all the throws, and was a leader. Mm-hmm. You can flourish doing that. It's a lot like the Baker Mayfield situation. They can win in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield if he stays healthy and they don't ask him to do too much.
Yeah. The problem, Key, in all of that conversation is that teams, they don't script the way that we did in the past, right? So much of their game plan is reliant on the quarterback making those plays, where when you and I were playing, it could venture off to another player. It was the run game's going to have to do that. Defense is going to do. Think about the Baltimore Ravens and how good they were early 2000s. With Trent Dilfer and that whole, their defense was, they shut folks down. Like, there are teams, the Tampa Bay teams that you played on, like good defenses, okay offenses. Like right now, everybody wants these quarterbacks to go light it up for 30 a game, and not everybody's equipped to do that.
But
like you said, there are good quality starting quarterbacks, but you, as a coaching staff, you have to be committed to running the football and protecting your quarterback from himself at times. I don't understand why that's an indictment on quarterbacks. That's every other player in the NFL. We all got strengths and weaknesses. Accentuate our strengths and limit our weaknesses. That's what a coach's job is. I think we've gotten away from that to a degree.
Jeff, can he be? Now listen to me now, Jeff.
We do have to wrap up the conversation, so make this quick.
Early Russell Wilson in Seattle. Early Russell Wilson. Can he be that?
Ooh. I don't know. I think just below that. I think just below that for me.
Okay, well, Dolphins owner Stephen Ross says that they don't intend on moving away from Tua, but of course he's going to leave that final decision up to the next head coach. So we will just wait and see what happens on that front. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. You have been a delight as always.
See you, Paul.
See you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, tell your dog we say bye too. Okay, back to the NFL. Carr versus Burrow will be the first quarterback matchup in the NFL wildcard games. Burrow coming off a record-breaking season where he threw over 4,600 yards and 34 touchdown passes. Not too shabby. Carr, on the other hand, throwing for over 4,800 yards and 23 touchdowns. He was also called a top 5 quarterback by someone on this show today. Listen.
There's only 2 guys. Both of them dudes are MVPs. Both of them got Super Bowl rings. You can't put his name with him if he's not doing it. People automatically assume that Gruden didn't like Carr because he went out there and got Nathan Peterman and went out there and got Marcus Mariota. So the first thing people start saying, Stephen A., like you, oh, this dude can't play. He ain't good. He ain't this. He ain't that. No, he top 5 dude, man. Oh, I did say that. Oh, I didn't realize I said top 5.
You should have heard his commentary during that.
I guess I did say top 5.
Okay.
Oh, well.
Okay, so both guys can fill it up on any given night, but Keyshawn, who will you be more confident in this postseason, Carr or Burrow?
I think it's going to be Carr. Now, it's going to be tough to go into Cincinnati and pull it off, but I think if they do it, I got to have confidence in him. He's a veteran. He's been in this league. He understands the magnitude of the playoffs. He has yet to play in a playoff game, although he led his team to the playoffs. Then eventually he got hurt. They lose to Houston and Deshaun Watson. But I think when you talk about young quarterbacks, young teams, young head coaches, it's really tough to understand the environment of the playoffs. I think the veteran staff that he has in Oakland can certainly, Las Vegas can certainly lend some experience. Whether it's Rich Bisaccia, whether it's Greg Olsen, whether it's Rob Marinelli, the coaches that have done it and been there before, and I think it will help him go a long ways in the postseason.
You know, it's just interesting to me when my tape got brought up from just a week ago, and I had to eat crow and say, you know what, some things I said didn't really pan out, and your response to Derek Carr being top 5 was, did I say that?
He did. He's like, maybe I did say that.
Hey, at least own it.
Blacked
you know what
out.
I mean? I owned mine. I owned my pain. I owned it. Listen, I just want you to be real with me, Keyshawn. Be real. He's not quite in that top 5. Just be honest with me. You honest with me right now?
Jeff, so if I look at the 5, right, if I'm really looking at it, we got...
Yeah, look at it.
We got the 2 bigs, right? We got Brady, Rodgers. Then we kind of got... Who after that? We can throw Josh Allen in there.
Josh Allen.
We can throw Dak in there. Who else?
Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes in there.
Mahomes.
So let's slide out of the 5 and let's say he's hovering around 6 or 7. Because even though we love Justin Herbert, he's young. He doesn't have a long historical body of work. The same thing with Joe Burrow. There's not this extended body of work in the National Football League. When you look at Aaron Rodgers,
this is still Derek Carr's first playoff game that he's going to play. I know he led him to the play. This is his first playoff game. So these younger guys are getting there quicker. Burrow's taken his team and flipped it, gotten there a little bit quicker. I would put him in the top 10. I think it's going to be a heck of a showdown. I agree with you. I will say this about Burrow. The difference for me, I think Carr's leadership has been fantastic this season. I think Burrow, what he's dealt with the injury last year and the beating he has taken this year, he's the most sacked quarterback in the league. The dude's got ice in his veins. He got ices on his shoulders and his back and knees as well because he's getting beat up. That he stands in there and delivers, I've been impressed. That's why I would put him above Derek Carr in that category.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I like Carr. I like his consistency
I just
since
want
he
you to, yeah,
came into
but
the
just,
National Football League.
we've all
consistent.
said things on TV that don't pan out. That's all I was trying to say.
Hey, he made it to the playoffs. Stephen A. didn't even have him making it to the playoffs.
Isn't that the beautiful thing about television?
That's fact.
Receipts for absolutely every single thing that everyone says. So you can't backtrack too much.
That's right.
But you know what? This NFL season, the end of it at least, has shown to be extremely outrageous. So a lot of people are walking back on things they said earlier this season. Guys, it has been so much fun. Keyshawn Johnson, Jeff Saturday, Charlie Arnold.